Can you hear me all right over here?
Yeah, we got you good. And we are back. Recurring guest, TP Gilman, one of my favorite guests to come on the show. This is your show number 6 already on the podcast, which is crazy.
What? I know I've
This
been
is
on twice, but still.
this is. I was looking into it this morning because I was talking to Bashada, and I'm like, man, he's such a recurring guest. You were on in January 2020, then you were on later in 2020 when you moved to NLWC. Then you were back on in the fall of 2020, early 2021. You came on after the Olympics. So like 5 times you've been on here. And this is going to be the best show yet because you always deliver for the fans and for wrestling people everywhere.
Yeah, I hope it's awesome. It will be.
So 100%. So let's start. I mean, you were in the news big time this weekend, rumors circulating of all sorts of stuff. I want to talk about that, but I want to back up. I want to, it's funny because this show I feel like has been a year in the making. We were talking at the trials about having you back on, and then we were talking to NCAAs about your first year at Oklahoma State, and finally the timing has just worked out where I'm like, let's get you on this week. And you're like, yeah, that's a bit tough. I'm in Europe. I'm like, okay, we can wait till you get back. But, going back to last year, the Olympic trials, you take the loss to Spencer Lee, and right away everything was set in motion fast for you to jump into coaching. What kind of went into that decision?
Oh, probably not enough. I think that I was kind of looking back on the year and what happened, maybe what didn't happen down here. It all kind of started there. Obviously, that kind of put everything in motion because if I beat Spencer, I make the team. I go to Paris, I win, I stick around Penn State, and
Yeah.
that's pretty much that. And that was the plan. Lose, and then competitive wrestling can be pretty lucrative when you're winning, right? When you have the sponsorships, you're having the prize money, different things like that. And then 23, I didn't make a team. Kind of looking at the bank account, it's like, well, probably should win or move on and figure out something else, get a real job, right? So that was kind of the position we were in. And then don't win. It's like, all right, well, how do I support my family? And obviously had conversations on multiple fronts, and there are a lot of variables to taking the job, but I think part of it was, just financial, right? You got to support your
Yeah.
family. I can't support them on what I was currently making, not having many sponsorships for various reasons and not making teams. So I think it was a very emotional decision. You kind of spend 20 years of your life or whatever it is kind of going towards a goal, and was really close in 21 and a little less close in 24.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to fill that void a little bit, right? So keep yourself busy. What's the next thing? Where I think looking back, I actually just had a conversation with Zane about this, trying to figure out like my life moving forward a couple weeks ago. I was like, hey man, I just like calling you as a friend. He does a pretty good job of finding stillness and just like pausing, then trying to make a decision. I just kind of jumped head first into things, and I think that was probably what I needed. Was just take a little step back and let things settle. I don't think until a few months ago I really addressed what happened in the trials.
Yeah.
Right? It was obviously losing the finals, and then the way I lost. I think that that first match got a little squirrely. And then second match, pretty similar to the first, and then get pinned, against Spencer. And Spencer's awesome competitor. We had some words afterward that were really awesome. But just the whole situation, with Brands in the corner, and nothing bad. It's just there's a lot there, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's my first spiel.
So it's crazy too because I feel like, two Olympic trials, like there was so much like both you guys, your time at Iowa, him still there. And then I think people were expecting more bad blood. And you guys talked after, and it's like, I don't know a single wrestling fan that didn't appreciate that. Like, it's always high, and I've never been on that side, but just watching it, like, seeing the highs and lows And if I'm friends with somebody or work with somebody, it's a lot easier to kind of feel for that side of the high or the low. But there's been times where I'm working with both guys, and you kind of feel it in juxtaposition. And you guys were like really respectful after. But it is funny because right after it, when you did an interview with Piles a couple months ago, you said like even your headspace, like you weren't 100% sure if you wanted to. Oh, did we lose him?
There we go.
Okay, we're back. Um,
Function.
Even at the trials, like you weren't really sure about going as the backup to Paris, and it gets a lot. Like you said too, we don't have to dive into cutting weight too much, but it is crazy. I thought what you said to Christian in that interview was great. Like cutting weight takes you to a place that not a lot of things do when life's very easy and you don't have a lot of adversity. And so I can't imagine like you get done with that and then you have these thoughts of do I go as the backup and try to, if Spence or something doesn't happen, qualifying the weight, and like, did you kind of find some peace and stillness in that time of like regrouping everything?
I think the best thing I could have done looking back was go to Turkey and make the weight and just be there just in case
Yeah.
something terrible. Because I think that would have gave me a little bit of actual space. You're out of the country. There's not as much going on. Those conversations with Dave and whoever else probably would have been put on pause. Because at the end of the day, I kind of, me and my wife talk about this a lot. Like, just trying to figure out what is going to happen next or how we do it better in the future.
Yeah.
Um, like, well, if they wanted me as a coach so bad, in that moment, then they would have in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or
Yeah.
whenever. And if they fill the spot between then and now, then they really didn't want me there anyway. So just kind of having just maybe a little more wisdom or patience and just kind of see how things kind of unfold. Because if I was in Turkey, those conversations weren't happening, right?
Yeah.
It all happened at the same time. So um, maybe there's a text, hey, we want to talk about hiring you as a coach. Okay, sounds good. We'll talk when we get back.
Yeah.
And if they hire somebody, then, well, maybe it wasn't the right position or they got squirrely and hired somebody. And
Yeah.
I think that looking back, there's a lot of things going into that Turkey trip, but I think I should have made the weight or got close to making weight. Sports Zane, um, but I just from an emotional perspective, I just couldn't do that. You lose and then you turn around. What's the right thing to do? I mean, I had that conversation with Coach Cody. He's like, there is no right thing to do. Um, maybe from USA Wrestling's perspective, the right thing to do is to go make weight and support Team USA. But at some point, you got to support yourself first and kind of pick up the pieces.
Yeah. Makes sense. So then you do end up taking the job at Oklahoma State, and you seem like you were beloved by fans, by the athletes there. In even watching it from afar this season, you kind of fell into that role like you've been there before. And I know that it might be your first coaching job and it was your first official year as coaching, but I've had kids on this podcast before, specifically the guys in the Penn State room that are like the mentorship, the leadership side of what you've brought to the room, even as an athlete. But this year is kind of focusing full time on coaching. What was that like for you?
It was awesome. I mean, it was a great learning experience. It was a great growing experience. Like I've told a bunch of other people, it's what the spiel I gave to parents when I'm recruiting their kids. It's like I feel like I've been coaching for a really long time. Um, this is just more selfless coaching, and the coaching I was doing before was more selfish.
Yeah.
So, when I was competing, I wanted to make the guy across from me a little bit better so he can make me better, Now I just want to make the kids better just because I want to make them better. I want
Yeah.
them to accomplish their dreams and accomplish their goals. So I think the biggest thing that I realized a couple years back um, was because I don't know, you kind of have this come to Jesus moment at some point in your life. Like, why am I here? Right?
Yep.
Why was I put here on earth? And what's my mission from God? Right? And I was like, it's not fame and glory. It's not because I've won tournaments. I won the world. I got bronze at the Olympics. I'm really happy and proud of those accolades. I put a lot of work into that. A lot of people put a lot of work into me to get there. But those things are in boxes in my garage that I couldn't find within 5 minutes. It's just those things aren't important to me. But I kind of figured out like helping people and developing them and kind of getting them on the path um, is kind of why I'm here. And so, just helping those kids. I've had multiple guys, since I left, whether it's not multiple, like probably three-quarters of the team call me, text me, come over to my house and me personally. And they weren't thanking me for teaching them single legs. They weren't thanking me for, why you shouldn't cut the middle without a little bit of tension or a lot of bit of tension. They were thanking me for, impacting their lives, standing up for them when they felt like no one else was, sharing the gospel and the truth with them, and just making them better men.
Yeah.
And that's really what it's about. And when I was sitting here, one guy in particular, was a leader on the team. He was a senior. He graduated. He got fourth place at the nationals, but I won't say who it is, right? For his, um, said some things along those lines, and he had tears in his eyes, and I was like, man, that's probably the best compliment I've gotten.
Yeah.
So there's some things, maybe they're going to circulate, maybe they are circulating. I don't know. People say things and get back to you, but people can say what they want about me, and this actually the community down here has been awesome. It really has been. People are great. There's some that are kind of sour. Obviously, you're gonna have that everywhere. Me and the staff didn't get along, but at the end of the day, they're gonna say what they're gonna say, and so what? I have this other side of the story, and the guys come to my house and call me and tell me how much of an impact I had on them in 8 months, and man, that's pretty
Yeah.
freaking awesome.
It's hard to beat that. And, I know one kid I want to talk to you about is Troy Spratley. When these rumors started getting out there on Sunday, like, hey, Gilman might be leaving Oklahoma State. And the first kid who posted something was Troy. And he posted a picture of you backstage. And it was just, tagging you in a heart. And obviously, Troy's a lightweight. You're lightweight. So I'm sure there was a bond there in coaching. And coaching that kid, what did that mean to you, to kind of, I feel like Troy was a guy who was under your wing. I feel like when the guys that are naturally closer to your weight, you have a lightweight coach, middleweight coach, heavyweight coach, and your excitement for, even Hamidi and Wyatt and other weights was there and very evident. But Troy specifically, what was your relationship like with him, and what was it like coaching him to the national finals?
Yeah, we had a great relationship. Obviously, I think that what you saw, like you said, from the outside looking at Oklahoma State looked awesome and great, and I think we did a good job of keeping the professional and for
Yeah.
the guys. But on the inside, it maybe wasn't quite that same way. With Troy, it was the opposite. I mean, everything was great, and on the inside, it was great. Great kid, very unique situation that he's in, and just try and help the kid out just any way you can. And man, I can't say enough good things about him. I see a lot. I mean, I try. This is probably my biggest um, gift, but also my biggest fault. I can see myself in a lot of people, and
Mm-hmm.
Troy, I could really see myself in, especially that national finals. It's like you wrestle awesome all the way through the tournament, and then all of a sudden, it's just like you just can't quite get there.
Yeah.
That's been kind of the my career. I've always been there, but I just couldn't ever get over that hump. And I did a couple times. You know, making teams and you know, but world finals twice. NCAA finals once. It's just you feel that pain. Because exactly what he's going through, and um, that was probably I was kind of sitting down with my wife. I was like, if we can come up with a couple of reasons on why to stay, we'll have a conversation. And some things, the things happen, and I was like, I have one reason, you know. And she's like, you have one reason to stay? Like, what is it? And I was like, Troy. That'd be it. And Roman.
Yeah.
Those two kind of, for me, those two kind of go hand in hand. But,
Yeah.
um, and I called him over. I sat down. We kind of talked about it. And so, Yeah, that was hard.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I guess So this you got out this week, and that you're leaving Oklahoma State. What went into that decision? And you can feel free to tell us as much or as little as you want about it. But kind of talk to me about that decision to leave.
Sorry, I grabbed the charger.
You're good.
Um, so, oh crap here. Leave it to me to be super professional about the interview.
Listen, it's the realism. That's what I love about it.
This is, yeah, you're not gonna get the sign behind me and headphones and
Listen,
any of
I'm
that.
300 episodes in, and I'm just starting to get it.
Yeah, that's what they all say. Yeah, this is just the state of my life right now, right here. Moving pieces around and
Listen, you are nothing if not always authentic.
well, I mean, I don't have anything else going for me, so
You've got a
authentic
lot
is what
going
it
for
is.
you. Listen, I have people that ask me when is Thomas going to post more blogs on his website? I want more articles. I want more insight from him. And I said, listen, I told him every time I see him, let's get more blog articles. Let's get your site updated. More people want to hear from you. So I'm doing my part. And again, 6 episodes of the podcast. I mean, I'm also not just encouraging the written word. I'm helping getting the interviews out as well.
Yeah. So yeah, everyone's been on me between you and Fellers and Bashada to get writing again. So probably should do that.
Move the camera over a bit if you can. Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
But yeah, you said what went into making the decision to leave Oklahoma State, right?
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot. I mean, um, obviously, kind of addressed it in the beginning. The decision in the first place. I'm not saying it was the wrong decision. I'm just saying the state of mind I was in when making the decision was probably wasn't a good headspace. It was fast, and um, so that's probably the genesis of everything.
Yeah.
Um, right when we got down here, it seemed like there was issues. Um, were they with me? Were they with the staff? I think that everybody's at fault. I'm not going to point fingers.
Yeah.
I'll put the blame on me for the most part, but I'm going to make people take accountability for their actions. So I think that it was mutual. These things weren't working on the staff, and I made a fuss a couple times just because I wanted to make it work. Um,
Yeah.
Things weren't addressed, and just wasn't going to work. When you're around people that you can't work with, you can't work with them. I kind of got to the point where it's like we can have a working relationship, but that's about it.
Yeah.
And then certain people didn't want that, and so our vacation was planned right after the nationals, just because we kind of sat down as a staff and kind of tried to stagger when we're leaving. Because if we don't leave or don't figure it out, we're just not going to do it. And we decided to leave from the nationals because we'd have childcare out there. My wife's family's out there because we're down here in Oklahoma, by ourselves. We didn't have the luxury to move our whole families down here. Um, and so we took the opportunity to go on vacation from there, and then we just kind of had talk. I mean, it was vacation's nice, but it was not vacation. It felt like a work trip.
Yeah.
Just trying to figure out what's going on or what's going to happen next, right? And so we talked and talked, and then some couple things happened, right after the tournament, and then no one wanted to talk about it, so I kind of cornered Dave and said, "Let's FaceTime," and so I can see the reaction on your face, and uh, yeah, just kind of had a feeling that it wasn't going to work for my family and obviously for the staff. And I think that for everybody's sake, just move on. And
Yeah.
no hard feelings, really. I don't think on either side. I mean, you can have a disagreement and move on and still be fine.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you um, if you know where you're going and what you can tell us about that, and then you sat down with a giveaway on your shirt. So that kind of gave that one away early. But if you want to talk a little bit about the next move,
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to Penn State, the Inline Wrestling Club. We are.
I love that. And is this a pure coaching play now? I know you said that. I don't think it was about me, but you said that some people said you were retired, and you said not retired, and it wasn't that necessarily about competing. You made it clear that it's like you don't necessarily retire in the sport, and there's a lot of people who agree with you. You maybe go from competing to coaching, but your shoes are always on. And I feel like there's a fierce debate around people that want to leave their shoes on the mat and people that don't. You're very adamant on the side of people who don't want to leave it on the mat. Moving forward, do you think you're going to be competing at all again, or is this 100% coaching?
I have no idea, to be honest. I mean, I remember sitting down after the trials with Coach Cody in his office and just was like, I'm done. Not wrestling ever again. And he was like, maybe, maybe. He's like, but I'm telling you that fire never goes away. And I was like, no, it's gone. It's never coming back. It's like I wasn't even sure if I want to do anything in wrestling. I was like, I hate the sport. Moving on. Um, but I mean, what he said was so true. That fire just never goes away. Does that mean I want to compete again? I I don't know. I had that one-off match with Ortega this year, and I think that was a huge mistake. Just like being funny about it, I was like, man, I like this. Like there's obviously a thrill sitting in the corner and it's, competitive, and but there's nothing like that thrill of strapping it up and
Mm-hmm.
stepping out there. And I had like a week to get ready, and I wasn't in shape. And then coaching half the time, I was like, man, I actually did pretty good. Imagine if I was training.
That's how they get you. That's how the sport
Yeah,
gets
right.
you.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I've had those conversations with Coach Cody and Coach Kale, and they're open and supportive of anything. If I want to keep just kind of do the coaching thing and help out that way, then great. If I want to jump back on the mat and compete, that's awesome too. Just whatever. They're supportive and grateful to have me back at whatever capacity. And that door opened back up, and wasn't sure if it was ever going to. You leave Penn State, um, it's hard to go back. I'd imagine, but they opened that door back up, and just not going to let them down again.
Yeah, and when you talk about like you don't, it sounds like you don't even know fully capacity as far as I know there's a lot of questions right away if like you go back to Penn State if you think you'd be on the university side of the coaching staff or the coaching staff of the NLWC. Have you figured any of that out yet, or are you kind of still just figuring those things out?
No, I mean it's figured out. I mean I won't be on Penn State University staff. I mean that's pretty obvious, I think. And if it's not, there it is. I'll be on the Nittany Line Wrestling Club, kind of doing the same thing I've been doing for years. But probably a little more responsibility, a little more work. But good. I need to stay busy.
Going back to that room, and you were at the room for years, but going back to that room now with kind of a different perspective, like you talked about before how you used to coach kids from the standpoint of you wanted your teammates to be better, you wanted your training partners to be better. Now it's a lot more of a selfless coaching staff or coaching position role. What are you most excited to bring back to that room from more of a coaching standpoint than the athlete side of it?
I think I just, I mean, I don't, I mean, until I get in there and start working with the guys and kind of, you know, evaluate, I don't know, like, what more I'm bringing back, to be honest.
Yeah.
I have, a year of experience coaching, um, but I don't think much has changed, right? I don't know, maybe my um, delivery or gotten better at. Um, I don't know, but I think that it'll just be the same. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna be myself. Think about it too much. Now I'm kind of questioning like, wow, I don't know if I can bring anything back. What I learned.
Listen, you have a lot to offer. I'm more curious, for you, and obviously you are so new to just dealing with that side of it. But I will ask you too, from a coaching standpoint. You go from wrestling is a very very selfish sport to very selfless very quick, and you go from all these years of having to be selfish as an athlete to now being selfless. Was there any kind of challenge for you transitioning in that capacity?
I think a little bit, yeah, for sure. I think that you got to check your ego a lot more,
Yeah.
especially like in the room wrestling the guys. It was different as a club athlete because I was training, and I would. There are certain situations where you're gonna pull back on the guy because you don't want you're in a funny position. You don't want to hurt him, or
Yeah.
it's right before the nationals or the Big Tens or Big 12s, and um, you don't want to crush him. For his confidence. Um, but for the most part, as a club athlete, you just kind of you get what you need and you kind of tune the guy up, and if you can, and that's why you're there, and to help him out in a lot of different other ways. But as a coach, um, you gotta really check your ego when you're wrestling these guys. Like wrestling Spratley, he's spark plug man, and he's kind of ornery, and you get in positions, and then he kind of gets a little feisty, and your first instinct is to, smack him upside the head and drag him outside the room, but you can't. I mean, it's just different, and so you're trying to like manage their emotions at the same time,
Yeah.
uh, not, but yeah, there are a couple times, this year where you're kind of wrestling and heart rate gets up, and you're kind of hitting that flow state, and you hit the leg, and you didn't really want to or need to, and then you got to let it go because it's not what's needed. So that's hard,
Yeah.
but it's awesome. I mean, I've had practice, being selfless. I have a family and a wife and two daughters. So, even when I was competing, that's why competing was such a great out for me because I go to practice for, you know, 3, 4 hours a day. And then that was my time. That's when I could be
Yeah.
selfish and what I need and come home, and you got to flip that switch and be, uh, be father. And now it's kind of like being father all the time,
Yeah.
you know, at home, obviously. And then, you know, I call them the boys, to my oldest daughter. I'm going to work out with the boys. They're my boys, man.
Yeah.
Like I like to take care of them. And yeah, so I think the biggest thing is got to check the ego.
Yeah. It makes sense. Um, I'm curious when you're early into your coaching staff. We often hear about coaches in any sport later in their career about like their coaching philosophy, whether it's brands, kale, or even in football, other sports. Have you started to kind of find your own with a coaching philosophy, or is it more just instinctual for you when you're working with guys?
I think it's instinctual. I mean, I try. Well, my grandfather always tell me, don't think too much. You get in trouble thinking. So, um, if I think about it, I might get confused and forget what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Um, I think coaching philosophy. I'm just me. I think I'm very intense and I'm very enthusiastic about the sport and the guys and the craft. Uh, and I probably get too fired up, but also um, I'm still learning. I'm not sitting here saying I know it all by any means. I'm learning, and I've looked back at this year, and there's some times where I'm like, yeah, I think that was really good coaching, and other times I'm like, wow, I really kind of got out of control there a little bit, you know. Um, and people probably know what I'm talking about too. But it's just part of the sport, I'm not gonna sit there and pretend I'm somebody else.
Yep.
I was pretty fiery on the mat, and I'm fiery in the corner. It's just Um, can I work on being a little bit more under control and professional in certain situations? Yeah, of course. But I'm learning. But philosophy, I think that um, just taking some of the philosophy that I've learned over the years is control, like stoicism, control what you can control. I can't control what he's going to do. It's really none of my business. I can control what I can do. So go out there and do your moves and worry about yourself. You um, I think that you get maybe in trouble thinking too much about the other guy.
Yeah.
You know,
Let me ask you this too, because I was thinking about this morning, and I'm not sure. I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure there's anybody else who has spent at least 1 year at Iowa, Penn State, and Oklahoma State. I'm not sure anybody else has. That's a very unique um, viewpoint for you to see all those systems and processes and cultures firsthand. How would you kind of compare and contrast the three environments?
well, first off, do you think that's a good stat or a bad stat?
I think it's a good thing because I think it's you're wanted at every top program in the country. So I think it's a damn good
At some
stat.
at some point, yeah.
I think that's a pretty damn good stat.
Or I could be not wanted at three of the best programs in the country,
Well, the
right?
fact that you're wanted back at least one right now, Penn
Yeah.
State,
So
tells
so
you.
I think it all boils down to I am wanted at the best program in the country. I think that's what it boils down to.
Hey, I'm okay with that statement.
Yeah. Um, I don't. I mean, I take the more actually in my coaching. I think a lot of Iowa comes out. A, a lot of Tom and Terry. To be honest, I remember the first time I was in the corner was at the World Team Trials in Omaha, and I was coaching Dayton against DeSanto, and I was sitting there with Tyler, and I was like, "Am I saying the same things as Terry Brands?" And he's like, "Yeah." I wasn't gonna say anything, and I was like, "Well, I mean, I swear I kind of cut my teeth, you know."
Yeah.
And there's some things that I think the my philosophy really like control what you can control and worry about your moves and your techniques and don't worry about the other guys. Just be yourself and wrestle. I think that's very much from Penn State.
Yeah.
So blending those two environments together, I think they kind of balance me out. Um, doesn't really look like it, but I think they do.
I think it does. I mean, if you listen to the fan reaction, even the Oklahoma State fans, when the word got out that you're leaving, like there wasn't a lot of animosity. There was a lot of like, man, so grateful for what Thomas did for us in the short amount of time he was here. So I think it's very apparent to those watching you. I'm curious too. What is one thing that you want to instill in guys you're coaching? And, even for wrestlers listening or younger wrestlers, like maybe it's something someone had told you earlier in your own career, or you wish somebody would have told you earlier in your own career. What's kind of one thing that's important to you to instill in guys?
I think this is kind of I learned this at Penn State with that staff, and I think I kind of just try to make it my own. Because here's the thing, I try to be honest with the boys. Um, there's no original thought really. You either heard it somewhere, read it somewhere. There's nothing new under the sun. So um, this is not my original philosophy, but I try to make it my own and give it some texture. Um, Winning and losing to me, like for Spratley going out there this year, winning, I didn't care if he won. Wanted him to because that's what he wants. I think.
Yeah.
Wanted him to because that makes me look better in the corner, makes it look like I'm doing a good job. Um, but the winning and losing doesn't matter as long as you show courage and you fight for 7 minutes or 8 minutes or 9 minutes, whatever it takes. You show courage and you fight. You come off the mat. I'm gonna give you a hug
Yeah.
and I'm gonna. And if you lose, I'm not going to think of you any different. If you lose because you were stalling, you didn't do your job, then nothing changes there.
Yeah.
Still going to love you. Um, but we're going to have a conversation on why, maybe you didn't show courage.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, I think about Teague Travis at the Nationals this year. I mean, he lost in that round on the backside, and the guy was freaking beat up, man. He tore his knee up in the beginning, and he was out for the year, and then comes down a weight. We throw him in, busts up his face, busts up his other knee. It's just like he couldn't even walk off the mat, and I'm just like, man, this guy's a freaking warrior. I mean, he lost, and he kind of got his butt kicked in that last match, but who cares? Doesn't that literally does not matter? Like I look at it from like an eternal perspective.
Yeah.
Like in eternity, like God doesn't care about medals, accolades, ego, Instagram followers, podcast likes. He cares about courage and standing up for what's right and fighting the good fight and staying on the path. Everything else doesn't literally does not matter.
Yeah.
And people can say, well, your job and you're leaving, it's career suicide and all these things. So what? So what? It's a status, it's an ego, it's a job. Like, who cares? Like, money's gonna come, it's gonna go. Like, status will come or it won't. Doesn't none of that matters in it because
Yeah.
in eternity, that's my where I'm at.
Yeah.
So there we go, all fired up.
I love it, man. The more you get fired up, the more I think people love it. Let me ask you this too, because one of the reasons selfishly that I want you to blog more and write more is because you do have so many interesting perspectives and thoughts, and I'm curious on you've talked a lot in interviews with me with others about your faith and what a role it plays. Talk to me about this past year. I mean, talk about a roller coaster. If you think about it, within a year ago from today, you were still like a week out from the Olympic trials. Like this past calendar year has been crazy. Some highs, some lows, and everything in between. How much has your faith played a role in kind of keeping you grounded through all that?
I think it's pivotal.
Yeah.
Um, there's just been a lot this year, between the team, staff, home. I mean, I don't know. I think that's one thing that when we were leaving Happy Valley, me and my wife brought up. She's like, I don't. We've been on this path together, this faithful path, and she didn't want to lose that. I was like, can't. That's glad to hear you say that because we're not going to and we can't. And I wanted to take that and kind of spread it, down here. And I feel like did a okay job of that, with the team. Um, but it's been really important. There have been a couple team dinners, like with donors, and my wife, bless her heart, sit there and kind of like nudging me. I'm like, what? What? And she's like, and I was like, God dang it.
I love that.
So get up and, ask everyone to pray before the dinner. And like, I've had more people come up to me and talk to me about those type of situations than
Yeah.
anything else. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, the faith has been um, important. Just kind of trying to keep us, on the path and then perspective. Like, you know, you gotta filter everything through the lens of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. If I was worried about material things and status and ego and Instagram and all these things, I'd probably stay in Oklahoma State. There's a lot of energy down here. There's a lot of excitement. They got third at the Nationals, and there was more talk about that than Penn State winning and breaking the team score. It's pretty unique. So, but it was keeping that at the front of mind. The faith and what's this journey really about. It's about just being true to yourself and doing what's going to bring you peace. And um, all my decisions are based off that.
Yeah. And speaking of Happy Valley, so you've got a mix really of you're reuniting with a lot of old friends, coaches, there's also a lot of new energy there. You got new recruits coming in. You've got Blaze, you've got Duke, you've got Ono now there. You're returning to a room that has so much going on. How excited are you for both, those friendships that, I know you said like they didn't really go anywhere, but to have those back day to day and to also be in the room with, so many exciting things happening. How excited are you for that aspect of it?
I'm really excited. Obviously excited to reunite with old friends. Friends I didn't, lose or there's no
Yeah.
like reconnecting, just like physical daily reconnection.
Yeah.
Um, like Zane, really excited to get back, hanging out with him and his wife and the strength coach and Nick Lee and all those guys. So, but like the new guys, it's going to be awesome. I've kind of been around Lilledal a little bit. Um, when he was coming up, committing and stuff, and excited to develop that relationship. And sounds like Ono's quite the character, so excited to get my paws on that cat. And then, um, we'll see if I still got it. If I can go in there and throw him around, which probably not. But if I do, watch out, I'm coming back.
There we go. We now know the barometer is competing
Yeah,
with those guys.
yeah. Uh, and then Blaze, we threw out a last minute pitch to him, bring him down to Oklahoma State, and didn't work. But yeah, he's Blaze is a great kid. I don't know him super personally, but just the interactions I've had with him and his family, I mean, they're just awesome people. So, um, really excited to to work with those guys and just see where I can help. I think I can help, but just got to get to know them and see where I can help them better. That's the first step. Is I'm not going to teach them anything technically. I don't, maybe,
I
but these
have a
kids are
feeling
so.
you will.
I know, but these kids are good, man. I mean, they're pretty good. I mean, I can polish things up for sure, but just help them, in every aspect of life. And that's my job. So, whatever I can do.
It's going to be fun when you inevitably come back on here in a couple months, and I'm going to do a segment because you said that it's a blessing and a curse that you see yourself in so many guys, and I'm going to ask you the next time you come on what you see about yourself in all the lightweights. Blaze,
No,
Lilladall, oh no, Davis. I'm just gonna go one by one and say, all right, what Gilman do you see in this guy? So that's a bit of homework for you for the next couple of months. Let me
yeah,
ask you.
I can see it in most of those guys already, but oh no, if I can find myself in him, then I got it figured out. I think.
Man, you two, like, talk about a potential series of content. Like, just Ono and Gilman together. Dude, he seems like he seems like an ultimate culture guy. Like, just super happy, excited to be there. Like, a glue guy in the bench. I mean, when I was at the Penn State Iowa duel, he's just hopping around, filming everybody and everything. Like, you could just tell he was feeding off the team, the energy. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing that dynamic. He seems like an awesome kid. Um, One thing I want to ask you about your competitive career. You're kind of leaving the door open, so we never really know. If you beat the doors off these guys, it sounds like you'll be back. But from your time at Iowa to winning medals, it's easy to look back sometimes and think about the things that you didn't get, but you did accomplish so much. Is there something in particular from your competitive career that you're the most proud of?
Hmm. I think two things, and for different reasons. Getting bronze at the Olympics, that's probably my biggest accolade. But just the way that first match unfolded, like, okay, the draw comes out, you got two-time returning world champion first round. It's like, let's go. Like, you got to wrestle the best to win, anyways.
Yeah.
And then you're in the match and you're winning the match and you're gonna win the match, and then something clicks in your brain and you're just like, you quit wrestling to wrestle and score points, and you start wrestling to win, and then you lose, And I was like, crap. And then just how he came back and won against, I think it was Uzbekistan next. I was like, holy crap. Like just a lot, like I thought my fate was sealed. Like one match at the Olympics, I was done, and then he hits that super duck right at with no time left, and then I was like, because I turned around and walked away from that TV because I was like, that's it, I'm done. But I was like, no, you got to watch your fate be sealed. You're gonna watch the two-time world champ that just beat you lose to freaking Uzbekistan and put you out of the tournament. You're gonna watch it. And I might have put just enough energy into that TV that he pulled it out. But then, getting a second chance at that tournament was like I was so elated. I remember sitting in the sauna and I was so happy to be cutting weight. Like, just I'm cutting weight. I'm going to the Repershot tomorrow. This is awesome. And I remember Dave in there. He's in the finals. He's kind of like moping around. I was like, get your freaking head up. Like, let's go. Like, we'll wrestle tomorrow. Like, finals, Repershot. Like, and so then coming back and just like being extremely free on that backside and tech in Uzbekistan, and then kind of really taking it to Iran, who we've split matches in the past.
Yeah.
Was awesome, that comeback. And a lot of people talk to me about that. But then the World Championships right after that in Oslo, not because I won the Worlds, but because of the situation that I found myself in. And I don't know if I spoke on this. Maybe you can tell me if I have. I got COVID right before we were supposed to leave. I fell off or whatever, and then I had an extra COVID test from the Olympics. So I just took the COVID test, which I don't know, probably shouldn't have done. And then I called Coach Cody and I was like, "Hey, I got COVID." And he's like, "Oh crap!" And so couldn't work out, couldn't come to the room. We got creative with some things, and I think it was like every day I went from like this, I'm not going to the Worlds, I cannot make weight, I'm calling Bill's attic and telling him I can't go, to nope, I'm gonna figure this out, I'm gonna go. And my wife is just like talking me off the ledge like constantly all day. And so we get, like the very last day that I could get in the country, like the way things worked, I can't remember. Like I passed the COVID test and we got a flight and I got out of the country. And then the process of making weight was crazy, and then I did, and I was like, I told Coach Cody, I was like, I do not care if I win. I don't care if I even win a match. If I make weight, I'm the toughest SOB in the world. And he's like, you are the toughest SOB. Go make weight. And I made weight, and that was like my goal was to make weight.
Yeah.
And I did, and I was like, well, I made weight. I might as well just go win the freaking tournament.
And then you did. That's crazy, man. There's so many trials and tribulations that people have in this sport that never make the light of day. That's one thing I love about this podcast. I don't think you've told me that story. I mean, that was 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago now, so that was a while ago. And that turnaround, too, from the Olympics to Oslo, we kind of saw it with Taylor dropping a match to Yazdani in Oslo after beating him at the Olympics, where it's like that tight turnaround you guys had to go from... You basically wrestled in the span of 3 months what you'd wrestle in 48 or 24, sorry, where you have an Olympics and Worlds back to back. And it's crazy that for you one of the toughest things was the weight. But how's your weight nowadays? I like what you said, that like cutting weight is a crucial part of the sport, and it really does help build diversity. I remember my cutting weight days, and I was never any good, but it does teach you a lot. But for you specifically, looking back at I pull photos out for graphics and stuff, and I'm looking at some of your photos from like Final X 2023, Final X 2022, and I'm like seeing your face sucked out, and it's like, as much as that does build character and adversity, are you glad that for now your weight cutting days are done?
100%.
Are you finding other ways to grow in adversity? Because I know you do. You do like that part of it. You do like the adversity
Yeah,
and getting taken to deep waters.
I have this way about me that I don't have trouble finding trouble. So I find adversity every time I turn around. Like I don't know, I gotta yeah, but um, yeah, I'm glad it's over. I had to make 140 for that match with Ortega, and I really haven't stepped on the scale much before that. And then I stepped on the scale after practice one day, and I had a good workout. I was sweating good, and I was like 46 and a half after, and I was like, oh. And then it wasn't, it was nothing to get down to 140, but I was like, I wonder what I started this practice at, 150, but
Man.
I
So
probably should shrink down a little bit. Um, I
so
don't know.
return at
We'll
65 kilos is not out of question.
Well, the strength coach, that's where he wants to put us. Put me in that weight room 3 times a week, and
Just bulk up, man. 65 kilos, LA 2028. You hear it first. All right, Thomas, I've taken up a lot of your time this morning, the past hour or so, and I'm very grateful to have you on once again. Final thoughts here as I let you go. Do you know when you're heading out east? It looks like you're still enjoying the warm weather in Oklahoma, and it's a bit colder here, but do you know when you're making the trek back out east?
we're working on it. So we've already got in contact with a realtor. He sent us a bunch of stuff that need to actually look at probably this morning. We'll just get this house, on the market early next week, and then just take it one step at a time. Kind of got U-Haul or Penske truck lined up and eyeballed, and figure out who's going to drive that and who's going to drive vehicle, and just one step at a time. The U.S. Open's coming up. I don't know what my plan is for that. I mean, what I mean, no cliffhangers there. I mean, like, ain't competing, but like, if I'll go, if I'll,
Yeah.
coach, spectate, assist. So, I mean, hopefully by May 1, we're out of here. And then once we're out of here, we'll start the process of buying a house. And
Did you guys have a chicken coop out in Oklahoma?
no,
So you're gonna get back to the chicken, back to the homestead in PA?
yeah, that's the plan.
I love it.
See,
All right.
living down here, like, it's great, but I mean, it's just everything that I stand against. This neighborhood we're in. You got neighbors everywhere, fence and HOA, and
Oh, HOAs can be brutal.
people leaving me notes. I need to mow my grass. It's like, yeah, I will when I get some time. All right, like, I got a job and 2 crazy girls. Like, I'll get to it at
You
some point.
mentioned just having the balls to go to Thomas Gilman's house and tell him to go cut the grass. The balls the HOA
No,
people have is.
no, that's the point. That's the freaking point. It's like, if they had the balls to come ring on my doorbell and tell me, I'd actually appreciate that. But they leave a note in your mailbox and tell you, they came and confront you.
That might be I'm not a clickbait guy, but that might be the title of this podcast is You'll Never Guess Who Left a Note in Thomas Gilman's mailbox.
The president of HOA.
Oh, man. Thomas, thank you truly so much for making the time. Any final words here before I let you go? I know you got a busy day ahead.
I don't think so. Just follow along. I think me and Bosch are going to work on some things to put more content out there on my end. So, yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah, for the people who are wanting more written content, especially, we're working on something. So, all right, man. Have a great day, and we'll speak soon.
Yeah, thanks, brother.
All right, see ya.